A minute past 7 o'clock in Nairobi. You're just on time for your world this Thursday, the second last day of the month of April. Now, it's been more than a year since COVID-19 began ravaging the country and putting parents out of work, shrouding their homes in grief and loss, and shutting children out of schools. Yet, even as the spread of the virus slows down in some areas, the social toll is still coming in fast and hard, and in many places, it comes at the expense of the most marginalized children. This morning, we take a look at the rights and welfare of children in Kenya, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic, and how they can be protected. My name is Victor Kiprop, and this is your world.
We need to embrace this potential and support them.
Coming up, COVID-19 is taking an unthinkable toll on children, compounding existing risks as new ones emerge. But where is the rescue? Baringo man bans his 5-month-old son over a domestic disagreement. We have the details. Thousands of children, especially girls, left vulnerable as COVID-19 shuts rescue centers and orphanages.
It's actually made it a lot easier for kids to get recognition amongst the industry itself.
And skateboarding to make its Olympic debut in Tokyo, and South African skateboarding Brandon Valhalo has become more determined. The welfare of children during the COVID-19 pandemic and how they can be protected. That's what we're talking about this morning. And on our question of the day, we ask you, COVID-19 has compounded existing risks against children, even as new ones emerge. How can the rights and well-being of children be improved? Be sure to be part of this conversation by tweeting us at NTV Kenya and at Victor Kiprop _. Use the hashtag #NewNormal. You could also follow the conversation on Facebook and Instagram and also YouTube. But just before we get into that, let's give you a quick update of the coronavirus situation in Kenya and across the world. And these are the latest global numbers according to Corona Tracker. 150,216,590 people. That's the number of people being confirmed with COVID-19 across the world so far. 128,262,689 people, of course, have luckily recovered so far. But sadly, we've lost 3,163,873 people to COVID-19 so far across the globe. Yes. Right, we will give you the Kenyan numbers, of course, according to the Ministry of Health in a short while. But of course, we continue to urge you to follow the protocol set out by the Ministry of Health, because if you look at the COVID-19 numbers, especially the fatalities, they keep going up, and we continue to urge you to follow those protocols, including washing your hands or sanitizing as regularly as you can, masking up as much as you can or at all times, and also maintaining the 1.5 meters social distance. Before we bring you that story or that conversation about children, let's give you a quick update of what else is happening across the African continent. And residents of Ouagadougou, I hope I pronounced that right, in Burkina Faso have expressed anger and sadness after the kidnapping and murder of 3 foreigners in the east of the country. The 3 Europeans were initially reported missing before Burkina Faso announced on Tuesday that they had been executed by terrorists, despite an intensive search by Burkina Faso's defense and security forces for them and their assailants. Underscoring the country's fragile security situation, gunmen killed at least 15 people in an overnight raid on several villages in the northern Seitenga area, according to a local lawmaker who sought anonymity. 5 more people were kidnapped as Burkina Faso has been struggling with a ruthless insurgency by armed Islamists who swept in from neighboring Mali in 2015. From the west of the continent to the south, and making a career out of skateboarding has not been a rash decision for Brandon Valhalo, especially when many don't consider it to be a real job. But since it was announced that skateboarding would make its Olympic debut in Tokyo, the 22-year-old from Johannesburg has become more determined than ever to shine, calling it a milestone in his career.
For me personally, it's an honor, to say the least, to be able to go out there, represent my country, represent my people as a whole. It's also a milestone in my career because ever since I was a young kid, I always wanted to reach the pinnacle or the highest level of competitive skateboarding. So for me, it's a dream come true to really go out there and represent and try my best to bring back a medal for my people. For most people, and the traditional kind of thoughts and process in people's minds is that the only kind of real job is being a doctor or a lawyer or a financial advisor. Whereas at the end of the day, this is where I put most of my hard work and time and effort into, and most of my time between 9 and 5, where those guys are sitting in the office, I'm over here practicing and working on new tricks and working on my consistency as well. Social media and filming content and putting it out there, at this day and time, it's actually made it a lot easier for kids to get recognition amongst the industry itself. Because you can't just post a crazy clip of whatever you're doing on social media and it can gain traction amongst a lot of people. For me personally, Johannesburg is where I was born and where I grew up, and the kind of streets, and to get to different places, it's a far drive. And also the city is very dangerous. So for us as skateboarders going out to the city, being a young kid, we weren't able to really grow up being specifically in the streets. Whereas for me, I grew up skating in skate parks.
Let's stay with the Olympics and admission of new sporting activities, shall we? And Egypt's combative sport of taktib, or stick fighting, popular at festivities and dating back years, at least 5,000 years ago, has become a modern martial art that has enthusiasts, and they hope that eventually will make to the Olympics.
The people, when they hear tahtib, they thought it's a folklore and dancing and this stuff, because some folklore teams, they're using tahtib in a theater, and the people took a picture about tahtib, it's a dancing or something for festival. They don't know that tahtib, it's an ancient Egyptian weapon, and this is a fighting style. If we back to the root, it's a sport, it's a military weapon. It's a stick, long stick. They use it, the ancient Egyptian, in the fight. In a medium range fight, there is 3 range in the fight. Long range fight, it's a bow and arrow. Medium range was the tahtib.
And on to a sad story that will hopefully lead us into the conversation of the day about protecting the well-being and welfare of children in Kenya. Police in Baringo County are looking for a man who burnt his 5-year-old month child following a domestic disagreement. The man is said to have gone into hiding after the Sunday evening incident and has only been identified as the head teacher of Katakon Primary School in Baringo, as Bridges Ngana now reports.
At the children's ward at the Baringo County Referral Hospital, Ann Kibiego feeds her 5-month-old son. The child is a victim of his parents' differences that saw him burnt over the kitchen fire on Sunday night. Anne had been locked out of her kitchen by her drunk husband, Paul Kisang, who carried out the heinous act on a defenseless toddler whose apparent mistake was not being his child.
Alingishwa kwa moto ya nini kuni. Hakuwa anataka huyu mtoto, alikuwa anataka uwe mtoto nia yake kabisa. Juu alikuwa amesha nini inua mguu juu akitaka kumkanyanga wapi tumbo.
According to the baby's mother, this was the second time her husband tried to kill their son. The first time he allegedly broke his leg when he was only 3 weeks old. Since Sunday, she had not taken the child to hospital due to supposed pressure from the community not to implicate the man who committed this offense.
Mama anasema mtoto amechomwa na baba na kisha asubuhi zingine alifunja yeye mguu mpaka akawekwa plaster. Na mama ameambiwa asiseme mtoto amechomwa, sema mtoto ameanguka akachomeka.
Huyu ni mtoto wa 8. Sasa kufika huyu ndio mtu akaanza kuharibika. Kaniambia hata kwa kwetu hakuna mtu mwenye ataishi kama si ya kwetu. Huyu mtoto wesepana atakufa.
She had sought help from the chief, who seemed to delay the matter as he wanted her to take the child to hospital together with the father, who is the accused. Thankfully, the Children's Department here in Baringo has taken up the matter. They are calling for the immediate arrest of Paul Kisang, the head teacher of Katakon Primary School in Tiati, and for the Teachers Service Commission to also strike him off the teacher's register since he is a danger to other children.
Mtu kama huyo anayetetea mtoto mdogo kinyama hayuko supposed hata kufunza shule ya watoto kwa sababu anaweza kuchoma hata watoto wengine.
We call upon now the security personnel in charge of that area of jurisdiction to take tough measures by arresting the perpetrator and be brought to book, be charged for that heinous act, and this will act as an example to other parents, caretakers and guardians who are molesting or those who are abusing our children.
Doctors say the child is responding well to treatment but will need specialized care for his facial burns, which might unfortunately affect his sight. Anne, the mother, lacks the resources to cater for the child's further treatment, and any help she can get can save the situation and give her son a chance at life that any 5-month-old baby at his age deserves. Bridget's Ghana, NTV.
Let's now get you started on that conversation that we promised you about the welfare and well-being of children in Kenya, as well as their rights and how they're faring during this COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, given the example of the child that in that story, how they can be protected. And this morning I have two guests who are joining me on this discussion. They deal directly with children every day, or at least it's an organization that deals with the welfare of children. And joining me in studio this morning is Tina Mukunda. She's the operations director at World Vision Kenya. Welcome to the show, Tina.
Thank you, Victor.
All right, joining me also on the other side of studio is James Angawa Anditi. He's the program effectiveness and impact director also at World Vision Kenya. Welcome to the show, James.
Thank you, Victor.
All right, but we are not alone in this discussion. We want you to be part of it, and that's why we want to involve you in this conversation. And we have our question of the day this morning, and we are asking you, during, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic has compounded the risks that are facing children. We ask you, how can their rights and welfare of children in Kenya be improved? Be sure to be part of this conversation by tweeting us at NTV Kenya and at Victor Kiprop _ as usual. You know, the hashtag to use is new normal. You could also follow the conversation on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, where we are streaming live. Of course, soon we will be putting up our lines at the bottom of your screen if you want to call in and be part of the conversation. But for now, we have to start this conversation. And Tina, I'd like to start from where that story just ended. Mm-hmm. A man, a father, and a teacher burning a 5-year-old month. Let me just get your reaction to that.
Yeah, thank you, Victor, and good morning, viewers. Yeah, it's very heartbreaking, yes, first and foremost. But I will tell you that, Victor, these stories are very common. And statistics of this country really shows that 1 in 2 children have reported violence. And if some kind of form of violence could be physical, emotional, sexual violence. So these stories are very common, and that's why World Vision works with the government and other structures and other partners really to ensure that children are cared for, protected, and also are participating, and also really engaging communities to ensure that there is protection of children. Yeah, it's a sad story, but unfortunately, they are just very common stories, mm-hmm, that are in the society of this country.
And that is coming from a school head teacher, someone who perhaps has another 800 children in his custody school.
Exactly.
How does that make you feel?
I mean, I will tell you that unfortunately, even the cases of violence against children, you know, if infected by those that are actually close to the children, the people who are known to the children, even at the family level, relatives. When you talk about issues of child abuse, you know, rape, defilement, people who rape children are not strangers. They are very known to the children, they are relatives, they are people who stay with these children, and even parents. And there are many underlying causes that cause that kind of action to happen.
And obviously, of course, then, as you mentioned, the issue about the people, the perpetrators being close to you, we always tell our children, you know, to stay away from strangers, run away from strangers when sometimes the danger is just closer home.
Exactly. That is where we have a Pandora box that we need to deal with. But yes, we need to be able to equip the children for them to be able to detect when actually it is going beyond what is normal for them.
All right. And I think this has driven us right into the heart of this conversation, because that's where the challenge of how to protect these children comes in. Let me just bring in James at this point, because James, Tina raises a very valid point about the danger being close and the perpetrators being those who are close to us. So how do we even start protecting these children when the very same people who should be protecting them, for instance, like the father, are the ones, of course, who are harming them?
Thank you, Victor. Let me begin by saying that child protection really begins at conception, because what you do to the child when the child is still in the womb, the 9 months, up to the time, you know, it is born, and up to 18 years old, as responsible, you know, parents, communities, we need to take care of every aspect of what happens within that sphere. And one of the things that is critical for us to understand is that at the family level, because you're talking, the story we've seen is just at the family level, and just like my counterpart, as Tina has said, you know, if there are no clear social norms, practices, and laws that ensure that there are consequences for the actions like we have seen, then we will just keep on talking about, you know, protecting children, but it will just be a talk and not action. So in brief, then, it means we have to really interrogate and ask ourselves, to what level then would an adult, you know, a well brought up thought person, you know, commit such acts? It would mean that there are gaps in what I've talked about in terms of laws and social norms that should avoid such things happening to our children.
And James, one would argue that the laws might be there, but if we look at it from the bit of person X, Y has harmed a child and they will be prosecuted, it's more of reactionary, sort of reactionary. Is there a way in which this can be a bit more preventive?
Exactly. Victor, you know, if you heard the story very well, there was talk that this mother was being pressured not to speak out. And that is where the gap begins. Because if the law is there, but then people are masked, they're not empowered to talk out, to shout, then the appropriate action cannot be taken. So that is one critical aspect. And again, I would want to reiterate that as World Vision, we've come to the realization that if you really want to to address some of these challenges, the first place is to empower the children themselves, you know. And then secondly is to educate the parents, provide them with the right capabilities, so that then they are able to know to whom should they report to. Because sometimes, you know, as you've seen in that story, the community structures can inhibit progressive, you know, actions on some of this. So therefore, to what extent then can we empower the parents themselves? And then to what extent can we also give them the right skills to be able to understand that what are the boundaries, you know, so that if one boundary is one level is not able to they're not able to get through one level, then they can then move to the next level.
Okay, and allow me to press you, to challenge you on that a bit, because when it comes to empowering the children, I believe we can empower children who perhaps are above, let's say, 8 years old. We try to tell them, I mean, children who already have some basic, you know, understanding. We tell them, don't come too close to a stranger, don't do this, don't do that. But in that story, as you can see, we are talking about a child who is 5 months old.
Exactly, and that's why one of the critical, you know, steps is to ask ourselves, what are these structures that exist that can take care of the children at that early age, from the age before they really are able to take actions for themselves.
Okay.
And one of the things in World Vision that we've really insisted on is to work closely with the government structures. You can realize in that story that the people who really took up this matter were the children officers on the ground. We've got the spiritual leaders, because these are people that interact with the families. Most of the time they can't be able to know what's happening, what was eaten in one house, and you know. And then we've got also the neighbors, you know. And when you talk about the neighbors, you're talking about accountability, you know, good neighborliness. How do you also rally the neighbors towards a common goal? Because if they understand that within their communities there are consequences and they need to take action against particular vices, then at least you will be sure that somebody will be watching, and therefore that will be a deterrence, an immediate deterrence at the neighborhood, so that this type of heinous acts do not obtain.
Okay, and let me just come back to you, Tina, because that story, of course, is just one facet, the bit about violence. But there are so many in terms of the risks that face children, whether it is the issues of lack of access to education, the issues of hunger, of not getting the correct nutrition, the issues of their health. It's just wide, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Just talk to us about the wide range of the issues or the risks that face a Kenyan or an African child today.
Yeah, so I will take it from the angle of how we look at child well-being in World Vision, and what makes a child happy, and what makes them thrive, and what makes them therefore not be able to enjoy the good life they're supposed to be enjoying, because children are actually supposed to enjoy good life. And for me to speak to that perspective, Victor, let me first let you know that in Kenya, really, the 50% of our population is comprised of children. So it is important to understand the criticality of us really dealing with issues of children, so that then I give a background what it is that is actually facing children. So from the perspective of World Vision and how we view the issues of child well-being, we envisage a child who is really at the thriving stage, as a child who is able to experience first and foremost the love of God and neighbor. And that speaks to who we are as an organization, because we are a Christian-focused organization. But over and above that, we want to see that children are cared for, protected, and are participating. And that feeds into the story that we are talking about. Then they should be able to enjoy the good health, just like you've talked about, and also then be able to be educated for life. So when we look at that landscape, there are quite a lot of gaps, glaring gaps for that matter. First of all, we have rampant violence against children in this country. I already have told you about the statistics, where we are talking about
1 in 5?
1 in 2.
1 in 2
have experienced some kind of violence, be it physical, emotional, or sexual. And quite a number of them, like 28% of the population of the children, especially in the areas where we work, say that they have witnessed violence in their families, but also in their communities. And therefore, we have a lot of issues like child marriage, quite rampant. 20% of children between ages of 15 to 19 are either pregnant all have actually had children. So we have children having children.
Oh.
That is a big issue, because how can a child give birth to another child who's taking care of the other? We actually know that we have to, let me just make it even more real for you. We have cases where you have a kid at 25, 29 who is already a grandchild. Because, the cycle continues.
Okay.
Because if I give birth at 11, at 12, we have
shocking.
seen. So at the end of the day, the child that comes out of me, because I'm a child, I don't have even child, parenting skills that I need. Most likely, the child I will give birth to, if it is a girl, most likely they also give birth at an early stage. So we have issues of child marriage. We have issues of, rape and defilement. We have issues of FGM, child labor, and the list can actually go on. And the root causes of that, if you're to think about that, is about, monetary poverty, but also poverty at large. And that is why when you are dealing with issues of violence, you cannot just deal with symptoms. You have to deal with the root causes of violence. Like in this case, you can see in Baringo case that has been just aired in here, the woman says, this is not the first time this is happening. So there are certain signals, the early warning signals, that actually if there were interventions and this woman was aware of where this was actually leading to, they would have prevented it.
Is there a relationship between maybe poverty or how well doing financially the family is and perhaps issues of violence against children?
Very close relationship does exist, because where there is poverty, most likely there is no peace at home. Because a kid comes to ask for food and the response, because you are angry, because you don't even have the money, the response is to slap that kid. So if everything is okay at the family level, and that is why World Vision we are talking about, for us to be even addressing issues of violence against children, we must intervene at the family level, at the household level, and then we go to the communities, and then we go to the structures, and then we go to the engagement that we need to have with the government.
But there are those who will argue that I'm just disciplining the child. They came home late, they did a mistake, I was just trying to discipline them. Maybe I went a little overboard.
Yeah, again it is a dish of interrogation. How can you discipline a child because I've asked you for bread, I'm hungry, and then if your response is for you to beat me, that cannot actually explain it. So really the issues of violence are very, very many in this country, and they are present everywhere. I am sure even you, Victor, you see them along the streets, and so there is the need for us to intervene. When we go into health issues, we have issues of maternal and child health, especially issues of immunization, issues of having children fully, the mothers are expecting to actually attend antenatal care. We have diseases and infections really affecting children. We actually understand, according to World Vision and statistics actually outside there show that where there is no lack of water, it actually accelerates diseases and infections. By just mere washing of hands, Victor, you are preventing over 30% of diseases. And this is so real in COVID. You can see the rallying call is for people to wash regularly. And so we have all those compounded issues that actually border health issues that affect children and affect their survival.
Yeah, and you raised quite a valid point about COVID-19, because that's where I was headed, because this thing struck us, I believe, around March 2020. And most of the time, even in the media, the stories that we tend to see is the issues of people who've lost jobs, the businesses that have been closed. We don't see the impact, the ripple effect that this has on children.
Exactly.
Do we?
And when you look at COVID-19 on the surface, it's kind of tells you that children are safe. Because we have got to understand that the infections
don't affect children
that much. But for me, where I sit, and if I can really take you on into the issues and impact of COVID-19, for me it's a children crisis. COVID-19 is a children crisis. And the crisis I'm talking about is secondary crisis, is the aftershock of the COVID-19. It actually affects children more. We have come to realize that in this COVID-19, era, that is a year ago, there has been escalated cases of sexual abuse. Why? People are seated at home and idle. The perpetrators are actually near the children. And so we have seen children getting married off. We have seen children being raped and defiled. And so they are not even safe. So when you even talk about water, one of the key ingredients of fighting COVID-19 is in washing of hands, frequent washing of hands. But I will ask you, how many people are able to access really safe and clean water? And so that means that children have to trek long distances to go and fetch the water. And that way, they are missing out, first of all, but also secondary, that's where they meet issues of child abuse along the way, as they are going to the wells, as they are coming back from, you know, getting the water, they are abused along the way. Then we are talking about, of course, children not being able to go to school. And you could say probably, yes, there's online option, but how many people can afford online, you know, education in this country? Quite a multitude of children are left out and they're not able to access, you know, education, and that definitely hampers their development. And also more critical to this is the loss of income at the family level. Because we know, like you've said, people have lost their jobs, the income generating activities have been affected, and people are not able to provide for their children at home. So we see cases of malnutrition, food insecurity, and that in itself actually causes violence.
Okay. James, the other unspoken, of course, issue that maybe Tina has not touched on is on the social aspect of it, because the kids are used to playing with the other kids. They're used to visiting their cousins. They're used to celebrating a big, you know, birthday party. They're used to playing in the river, swimming and all that. But now they're being told, you know what, you're not going to school, so you're not seeing your friends. Even the friends in the estate, you can't see them. And even those things that really matter to them, like birthdays and all that and events, you can't do them.
For sure, Victor, you know, COVID has brought a new dimension on how children, you know, the space for children to thrive. And I would say one that, you know, has never been witnessed, you know, before. And when you just mentioned, you know, the issue of the birthday, the other day, it was very interesting because I was having a chat with a child in the neighborhood, and they told me that this is the first time that they have never celebrated their birthday. And I asked why, because, you know, my parents asked that my friends should not visit our home. And that was a big issue to the child. But probably to the parent, it was just like any other preventive measures, you know. And of course, also in this time of lack of income and ability. Now, when the schools were shut quite some time back and the children stayed home, one consequence is that there was a lot of psychological impact that our children went through. Because, you know, children were basically locked down. And you know, the brain of a child is not like the brain of an adult, because at that developmental stages, you know, there are particular steps that if a child, you know, goes through without realizing specific activities around them, then it has a long-term impact. And therefore, we're talking about then, what is it that we need to do to equip those who are close to the children, right from their families, you know, to their teachers, to their, you know, other children, to bring them back to the normal. And this is a big conversation, and that's why in this time and this pace, we are confident that and persuaded that we need to invest on psychosocial and psychotherapy, you know, support, not only to the children and also to their parents. The other bit that I want to say is that, you know, looking at the performance, and we thank God that the performance for our KCPA came out the other day, and it gave a good result. One of the things that is positive is that children had the, you know, the chance to stay closer to their parents. There are absentee parents who have always been away looking for sources of income.
Yeah.
They don't know what happens to the child when they wake up and when they come back to school.
Yeah.
But I think that the positive aspect of what COVID also has brought is that parents have been able, therefore, to learn, to understand their children much more better. And therefore, we believe that if we have very, critical investment at the household level and equip the parents, therefore, to understand their children better, we'll be seeing responsible citizens, we'll be raising up responsible citizens that can be modeled, to really withstand shocks and challenges. And lastly, Victor, in this point, I don't want to talk about the place of role modeling. Because within any community, within any setup, within any sphere, there will always be those people that I could call outliers. People who are inspirational, people who have got hope, people who still, believe that every challenge is an opportunity to take greater innovation. And therefore, we think, and this is true, that when we bring up models at this particular time, people who can speak positive, messages to children, give them hope, then they can be able to thrive. And that's why in World Vision, being a Christian organization, we've invested heavily in, equipping faith leaders. Because you can imagine the Sunday school children, they're not able to go to Sunday school. Yeah. So to what extent then can they be able to still get that message of inspiration and hope from people who also understand that they have got the responsibility, to do it and do it better and with a lot of innovation more than what they have been doing before.
Yeah.
So we've seen this really creating a lot of change. We are getting positive feedback from those faith leaders that we have equipped. We are getting, we did a survey and we collected children voices from where World Vision works in 37 counties. And the results were amazing because one of the positive aspects that they talked about is that listening, whether they joined virtually or whether they listened through the radio, listening those messages have really gave them hope and given them hope. And they are looking towards some of the role models, that come and have these topical conversations. Okay. And so that is one aspect that we think that should be strengthened in this country, so that we have got role models that can inspire our children out of the pandemic and the aftershocks that they have gone through in COVID time.
Thank you, James. And this is clearly important, Tina, because I'm looking at this report by, I believe, the World Vision, I think is your report. More than 57% of children living in fragile and conflict-affected areas expressed the need for a mental health and psychological support. In fact, 38% of children and young people said they are feeling sad and fearful, with 12% on the extreme end of continuously feeling sad and fearful, who may be at risk of developing mental health disorders. When we talk about the outreach and the response that James is talking about, what needs to be in this message, or what is in the message that you guys are putting out there?
Yeah, just going back to the statistics that you've talked about on, children in fragile context, we very much appreciate that this country has many fragility areas or pockets of fragility. And so the problem is really home. And we know that where there is fragility, there are quite a lot of disasters that happen and could be maybe climate-triggered disasters, could be conflict-triggered disasters, displacements. All these issues actually affect children. So actually, statistics also shows that when there are disasters, over 70% of people affected are children and women. Why? Because they are actually at, they are at risk of losing their lives, but also the food insecurity and things like that. So they are emotionally unstable. And what is actually being affected is their mental health to the bigger extent. And so programs, when you are saving lives, sometimes when we are saving lives, we forget that there are some emotional issues that we need to deal with. And World Vision, in working with the government and UNHCR in a number of places where we are, we not only concentrate on saving lives, but we are also really running with interventions that are able to stabilize the children. Because how we do our response is that we respond, we rebuild, stabilize, and then we can transition. And so the immediate need is saving life. But after you have saved life, how about the mental well-being of a child? That's why we create safe spaces for children, where we have caregivers coming in and care workers coming in, talking with these children. We actually are able to work out interventions that deal with separated children, then integrating them again to their parents, or finding for them foster homes, because at the end of the day, even your mental health has a lot to do with the environment you are in at the family level.
And I'm going to challenge you on that, because these risks are quite a number of them.
Yes.
People who lack education, people who lack nutrition. We have people who have need the psychological, psychosocial support that you are talking about. We have, others who are at risk of cultural practices like early marriage and FGM. How do you even balance? And these issues are widespread across the country. How do you do this as a single organization?
Victor, I won't say that you are doing this as a single organization. Of course, the task is enormous. Yeah. So big, it's an uphill task. And issues that cause, child protection issues or violence are multifaceted. And you cannot just handle them with only one size fits it all. So you have to have interventions that run from health, education, resilience and livelihood, child protection, advocacy, mainstreaming. So we work with partners actually on the ground, like-minded organizations. Yeah. We work with the government structures. We actually are implementing and complementing within the framework of the government. And what we cannot do, other stakeholders complement. Yeah. We lay our activities, we complement one another, we plan together, we make sure that we don't duplicate, and just really making sure that all of us, what we are contributing is value add for the survival of a child. Okay, and I'm asking that because there's a feeling that sometimes when these issues are so many, there are others that tend to be forgotten, for instance, like street children. And we have this story that we're ready to give you now. Street children are what many consider the scum of the society. If we can get that story right now. I'm not sure if it's ready, but once it's ready, of course, we will continue. It's ready, yes. Street children are what many consider the scum of the society, dirty and unwanted. Have you ever thought what it's like for these children to be on the streets and what rights they have? Of course, my colleague Ngina Kirori tells their plight.
It is in the simple gesture of a meal, clothing, and even a shield in the fight against COVID-19 that left this group of street children content in the heart of Mulango Kubwa on the International Day of the Street Child. And indeed, every child must be known, loved and protected. But for Esther Njeri, who has been on the streets since she was a child, this wasn't the case.
Mamangu alikuwa anakunywa pombe, anatupiga.
Esther is a mother of 3 now and is expecting a 4th bundle of joy, but under sad circumstances.
Sana mimi niko na HIV na niko na ball. Na wale watoto wote wamechukua ni watoto watatu wa bezi dawa.
Joshua Kimemia spent his childhood on the streets. 10 years ago he left and has never gone back. He cites major issues, picking those without a home.
Number 1 is sleeping out in the cold. Continued unreported rape cases. We have police harassment.
The unreported rape cases are an issue Esther knows all too well about. Her first child was born out of rape. He was later stolen from her at the tender age of 3.
Serikali tunataka kuambia tukienda kuripoti hata mtu akiturape wafai ati kutuambia tuende kuja kesho.
There are people, they have potential, some are very good artists. We need to embrace this potential and support them.
During the national census in 2018, a total of 46,639 street children were counted. The responsibility of these children falls under the Ministry of Labour and Social Protection.
It is a saying as old as time itself that charity begins at home. But on the International Day of the Street Child, it may require deeper understanding on the need for awareness to be brought for those who go without the assurance of a hot meal, proper hygiene or safety, especially in the middle of a pandemic. Gena Kirori, NTV.
James, let me just get your reaction to that.
Yes, Victor, you know, staying in the cold at that young age without any hope is the worst thing that can ever happen to a child.
Yeah.
If you look at the commemoration of that day, basically the idea is then how do we sensitize policymakers? How do we sensitize our governments, our structures to invest and take cognizance that there is a growing population of street children. Now, we know that Kenya is rapidly urbanizing with the devolution. And one consequence is that there is a lot of rural to urban migration. And the question is, why do people migrate? It's because they're looking for better livelihoods. They're looking for better social amenities. And we can be able to learn from best practices because, the world has become a small global village. Mm-hmm. And we've seen countries that have been able to, confront these issues. But the starting point for me is what are the resources and to what extent do we invest into the welfare of the children? Mm-hmm. And this is why we believe in World Vision that influencing policy is very key, right at the county level to the national level, because we know that the counties have got responsibilities. And these responsibilities, are placed within different sectors of child protection. When you talk about education, when you talk about housing, when you talk about issues to do with the accessibility to health, for example, because these are the drivers that make people, move to places where they want better health, they want secure livelihoods. And I want to appreciate our government, especially the Big Four agenda. I think the framework is already there. And if there are very well thought out, partnerships, we've got the private, partners that are really willing to invest, then how could we co-create, programs that then can give them the ability to accelerate access to some of these social amenities, like, for example, shelter. Because if we get very, low-cost shelter programs, it's easier and it's possible. And I believe, I'm one who believes in this, mm-hmm. that we can be able to provide low-cost, shelter to some of these people. Mm-hmm. And then the next step then would be then, how then do we empower them not to depend on handouts, not to depend on arms, but to give them the ability, to start small businesses. I've seen through what we do, savings and transformation. That is, in other spheres, is called merry-go-round. If you go to the smallest villages in this country, you will realize that some of the drivers of economies at our rural areas is the simple merry-go-round, where women are able to invest and continue growing their enterprises. And of course, they graduate to, other levels. Okay. And so I think that for me, those are the small steps that we need to magnify. And we already have got, best cases that we can learn from. And so I believe that the future is bright if we come together and put our abilities and rally everyone towards a common goal for our children.
Okay. Tina, he raises a very valid point about the importance of this, children homes and rescue centers. But earlier on, we raised the point about the people who are supposed to protect and rescue you actually turning out to be your tormentors. And as NTV, we've been following up this story for, I think, more than 2 years now of this children's home in Bomet that was funded by a foreigner, I believe an American, who also turned out to be the one who was defiling these minors. So you end up with a situation where the person who was supposed to rescue these children is actually the one putting them in more danger and harming them.
Yeah, so Victor, that is, we talked about it and we said that is very common. And I think one way to go around it, and I think this is what has made us really be able to see the impact that we are seeing in World Vision through the interventions we are making in child protection, is really investing so much in prevention measures. So at the end of the day, you want to prevent and maybe respond to very few cases that would pass through the prevention cracks that you have, that may not have been closed. And so it pays off that we spend quite a lot of time educating community members, educating parents, educating caregivers, so that they can detect and be able to report and refer. Because at the end of the day, the accountability is to, I mean, a child is raised by the community. And so if you equip the community with the capacities and they're able to understand what does child abuse look like, and they know what it looks like, and then you create structures, both informal and formal structures, including reporting and referral system. Then I will tell you that at onset of issues like that, they can be detected and reported, and something can be done beforehand. So I am an ambassador, and I believe in prevention measures, investing massively in really passing on skills, in making sure that structures are actually in there, the referral systems are working, and we strengthen the system across. Then we can be able to hold each other accountable as far as child protection is concerned. All right. I'm going to come back to the areas that you as World Vision specialize in, but let me just take this quick call from Wairimu. I believe she's in Thika. Good morning, Wairimu. How are you this morning? Do you have a question or a comment?
Yes, I do have a comment.
Yes.
And possibly a question for that matter.
Yeah.
To be brief, I just wanted to say I'm glad that you are covering this topic of children and well-being.
Yes.
My greatest concern is the commitment, the government and policy commitment. We have very good policies, the Children Act, but the systems and structures for implementing these policies seem to be either neglected or nothing serious. You look at the personnel, the children are at grassroots level, and the welfare of the children can only be felt if the systems are working, all from the grassroots to the national level. But you will find that these offices are very skeletal in terms of resources and personnel, and the referral mechanisms can't work. So it is very, very, very difficult for stakeholders to even complement, because we feel alone, overwhelmed, and it is very sad that the Kenyan child continue to suffer so desperately when we are in comfort zone as government. It is sad because children, it is the duty bearer of the government to take care of children. Come to Thika town, kids as young and as 1 month old are all over in the street. What's children's right? What is children's right? Surely. And right now, as organizations at the grassroots, we are overwhelmed, because when we create awareness about child protection, for instance, at the very grassroots, so what do I do with a child who has been raped last night? You start creating awareness and skills on how to refer. So where are you referring them? They go to the police. What does a police do with a traumatized, abused child where he has nowhere to put that child? It's not even anywhere. I'm painting this picture because it's the reality every day. It looks like the grassroots organizations are struggling with very limited support. We need the government to step up in the responsibility of child protection, and it is serious.
Thank you, Wairimu. Thank you, Wairimu from Thika. Very, very, very passionate, of course. And I think the point that she raises is the policies are there, but the systems don't work. Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I just want to say that I feel her. I feel her frustration and her cry of desperation. It is the reality on the ground. The needs are so many. They are so overwhelming. And I want to agree with her that while we have mechanisms and infrastructures, sometimes the support is not coming through as effectively. And so I want to mention 3 things in here. The need for us and the need for the government of Kenya to really intensify and be intentional on investment in children. And even as we go into our budgets, into our planning, what is informing the budgets? What is informing the planning? What is informing the targeting? What is informing the resource allocation? Is it data that is actually coming from children? So that is the bottom line, because I have just told you that over 70% of this population of this country is comprised of children and youth. So if our budgets, if our plans, if our locations, if our targeting is not targeting the children, is not targeting the youth, then we are missing the point. We are actually creating, you know, it's just something, a bomb waiting to blast. And so I do want to believe that we can work with the government, we can work with the stakeholders. We are available, we are on the ground, we can give this data, and this data can actually inform the planning that is needed so that every plan that the government puts in place is responsive to the needs of the children. And there is accountability across. The second issue is all about advocacy and engagement with other stakeholders. I am sure even the government is investing, but how much is reaching the children on the ground? And who is responsible of making sure that actually the investment of children that is available is actually reaching the real child that is being targeted. And so that also again calls for community to come along with the government, to be able to hold meaningful conversations with the government, to be able to do the supervision around health centers, around schools, just making sure that what is available is being put to optimal use. And then there is a whole issue of partnership and collaboration. I want to encourage her. I don't think all is lost. We have seen quite a lot of achievements coming through just because organizations like World Vision has come out to actually partner with the government to respond to issues of children. So the issues of advocacy, the issues of partnership, the issues of investment of children.
Okay. Of course, wonderful from Tina there. We have to take a quick break at this point, but don't go anywhere because Tina and of course James are staying with me, and after the break we will be talking about the girl child specifically and what my guests in studio this morning and other like-minded organizations and of course the government on that aspect of collaboration are doing to make sure that the Kenyan child is protected. Don't go anywhere.
If there's one thing that all soaps do, it's wash. From buckets to basins, bathrooms to streams, and everything in between.
All soaps wash.
Yes, but Protex is different. Its reinvented formula with flaxseed oil boosts your skin's natural anti-germ defenses by 10 times more, protecting you against 99.9% of germs. So what keeps us healthy?
Protex.
Protex. Good health starts here.
Located in Maseno town along Kisumu-Busia Road, Maseno University is the only university on the globe that lies along the equator. The institution became a fully fledged university in 2001 and has market-driven, attractive and research-led academic programs. This Friday, 30th April 2021, the university will celebrate its 20th graduation ceremony, which will be live on NTV from 9 a.m. You can also follow the virtual event live on Nation.Africa Facebook page and all Maseno University social media platforms. Maseno University, Fountain of Excellence.
Try Panadol Advance for relief from headaches, body aches, and fever. With Panadol's Optizorb formula, the tablet gently breaks down in the stomach, quickly absorbs, and starts providing pain relief in 15 minutes. For fast and effective pain relief that you can trust, try Panadol Advance.
World Vision is a Christian organization that is committed to improving the well-being of children, families, and communities in Kenya. We do this through development projects in education, health, child protection, food security, economic empowerment, as well as water, sanitation, and hygiene. We believe in transformative change that is sustainable.
Very beautiful pictures of what my guests this morning, Tina Mukunda and James Angawa Anditi from the World Vision, are doing, of course, in the communities with regards to what we are talking about this morning, which is the welfare, the well-being, and the rights of the Kenyan child. Where are those pictures from? Or across the country?
Across the country.
They look so beautiful. They look so
across
beautiful.
the country, because Victor, we are in 37 counties out of 47 counties in this country. So our footprint is quite big and wide. And all those things that you have heard being mentioned in the advert is what we spend our days doing in the communities. Yeah, so we have been around for the last 47 years. And in all those years, we have been doing development. And we have done transformational development, like you have heard. We are, responding to the humanitarian issues and disasters, and we're also doing advocacy and justice for children.
Okay.
Child-focused in everything that we do. Whatever we invest in, whatever we do, whatever we work in has something to do with children.
Okay.
And very community-facing as well.
All right, and we have a very important story, of course, of what is happening in the communities. But just before we get that story, then, since you interact with these people, I know the picture that we're painting this morning is one that is desperate, especially with the story that we started with from Baringo. But having been doing this for a while, because I know World Vision has been doing this for a while, are you seeing any improvement?
Yes, yes. We are not where we started.
Okay.
I know we have not yet arrived where we want to be, but we are not where we started.
Okay.
Yeah, for example, in our last strategy, that was FY 16 to FY20.
And you have to tell my guests that it is financially.
Oh, financially, yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
We normally struggle with a lot of acronyms in the World Vision. And so that is 2016 to 2020. We were able to contribute to well-being of children of around 2.3 million children in this country directly. Meaning that our interventions have been able to reach them. And these are the interventions in education, in health, in livelihood, in resilience, economic empowerment, child protection, and the list goes on and on and on. But also through engagements with the government, through advocacy, ventures, we've been able to reach around 12 million children by passing policies, by influencing past policies that actually are favorable to children, both at the national level, but also at the county level. And so we have really done a lot of access work for education, for health, for water and sanitation and hygiene, but also really improving quality of care in all these sectors. with aim of us really improving the well-being of children.
And you're not planning to stop that anytime soon?
Yeah, we are here today to reveal something about the new strategy that we have. So I'm sure we'll get back to it.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's just get the story. And when COVID-19 was announced in the country in March 2020, the government ordered charities to shut down rescue shelters and orphanages, leaving many children, especially girls, vulnerable. In Doldol, that is Laikipia County, one more day safe house acts as a safe haven for girls fleeing early marriage and female genital mutilation. But when the institution was closed down temporarily, the girls were forced to go back home. And according to activists, the community took the advantage of the call to stay at home to perpetrate the deeply entrenched traditions. Some of the girls were subjected to the cut, while others were married off. And my colleague Rose Wangoi was in Doldol, Laikipia County, and he spoke to some of these girls during the lockdown and how it has ruined their lives.
At the age of 17, far too young to understand childbirth or parenthood, Rhoda, not her real name, got pregnant with her first son. It all happened after schools were closed in March 2020 due to COVID-19.
Baada ya shule kufungwa, nilipata mimba, alafu nikakaa nyumbani. Wazazi wangu wakaanza kusema niende kwa mwenye amenipata mimba.
She was forced to leave home with her baby and start a new life with her 20-year-old husband, who completed high school in 2019.
Maisha ya kuolewa ni COVID disaster. Sasa tunang'ang'ana.
Her story echoes those of hundreds of girls who are left vulnerable by the pandemic. COVID-19 led to unintended consequences, a rise in the number of adolescent pregnancies. When schools reopened in January, Rhoda decided to go back. She's now in Form 3.
Maisha yangu nataka kuwa mwalimu, alafu nipate kuwasaidia wazazi wangu.
Since the outbreak of COVID-19, the government ordered charities to shut down rescue centers to ensure compliance with social distancing measures, leaving many girls vulnerable to the very ills they had escaped from. In Doldol, Laikipia County, the One More Day Girl Safe House provides refuge to girls who have fled forced marriages and female genital mutilation. COVID-19 brought sudden changes across the world in 2020, and the rescue center had to quickly adjust and temporarily close down. 16-year-old Betty, not her real name, is among 50 girls that currently call the institution home. Betty ran away from home in 2012 and sought refuge at the shelter after her father decided she was ripe for marriage. The rescue center is a safe haven for her, but when it was shut down due to COVID-19, she was forced to go back to her home in Kipsing.
Wasasi walikuwa nataka wanikekete alafu waniitie mzee anioe, na siku anataka kuolewa juu nataka kumaliza masomo yangu nikuwe mtu wa maana baadaye. Baba alikuwa anataka nikekete na mama hakuwa anataka mimi niache shule. Sasa baba alikuwa na hiyo mfurugano akipiga mama akisema hapana, yeye anampiga.
Betty was in a dilemma.
Siku analala nyumbani, nilikuwa natoroka kwenda kulala kwa yenyewe. Siku nyingine nalala kichakani. Hadi nikaamua kutoroka kwenda mahali ingine kwa sister yangu. Kwa ndio niliweza kwenda kukaa na nikapigia mamele nikamwambia penye mambo yaliendelea, na akaniambia tafanya juu chini ili tuweze kurudi huko. Sikukuwa na fare yote, nilitembea miguu siku mbili kuanzia Kipsing hadi huko.
James, let me just get your reaction to that.
Yes, Victor, you can vividly read from the story that the evil acts of FGM are really deeply entrenched in our communities.
Yeah.
And in this country in particular, we've got what we call the hotspots. And I would want to say that FGM really in a deeper sense is not just a cultural, but also a spiritual, matter. And I say this because we've learned through our work over the years that if you want to change a human being, then you must change their worldview. You must, inflict their spiritual well-being. Then you also must inflict, therefore, later on, how that reflects into their physical well-being. And the hotspots that I've mentioned in this country have continued, perpetuating this heinous, act, especially on young girls, helpless. You can see that if that young girl was not able to run out and get a safe haven, she wouldn't have lived to tell a story and actions to be taken. But we've, apart from the fact that the rescue centers are very good places to just get girls at risk, what we've done in World Vision is to go a mile further. And one of these actions that are bearing fruit is to target the perpetrators of these acts. We have got decision makers at the community level. And within these communities, the elders are a big force. And so one of the approach that we've done is to look at how do you reach out to these elders, because their word is law at that local level. And we've seen through very progressive, steps. I would want to mention West Pokot. We've got programs in Mopos in West Pokot, where we have got very good results. We've got children who have been rescued. Within those rescue centers, we provide life skills to them. We provide, opportunities for them, not just to be there, but to, build themselves. We expose them to education and all that. Then the other big force are the men. Because, in those communities, women go through the cut, the young girls go through the cut because they fear that they will not be married. They are outskirts. So reaching out men and letting them understand that the cut does not affect anything about the woman you marry. And you've seen, warriors that have come, they're now the advocates working in those villages. And I would want to say that although the task is huge, the inspiration is that we've seen there are communities in this country that, practice FGM many years back. But now, because of, the girls are getting access to education. They're able to understand the health-related, consequences of these acts. And through that, then they're able to then change. But lastly, I would want to say that investing in girls and women is very key. Because when you invest in a woman, you are very sure that you'll invest into the health care of the child. And therefore, in World Vision, we've come to understand that, and of course with other players, the government and everything, working closely with the anti-FGM board has given us the impetus to rally what the president has said, that FGM must be eliminated. And there are very, very strong commitments coming from the government. And from the CSO point of view, we are really, really happy that this is happening, especially during this era. Thank you very much.
Tina, on this certainly are things, then, from the way James is talking, at things you deal with every day. You must be feeling some cringe having to hear a child talk about being given a mzee, and that mzee sometimes, which is husband, could sometimes mean a 50-something-year-old man.
Yeah, it's very absurd because that is really affecting the future of a girl child. And in World Vision, we are running a campaign that talks about really it takes a while to end violence against children. And we are putting across 3 main areas, child labor, child marriage, and FGM. And so I'm glad that even the government has recognized the extent and the scope of this problem. And they have even having the president of this country really running the campaign to eradicate FGM. And so World Vision, just like James has said, has been really working alongside the government. And we have some communities like in West Pokot that where we have worked with elders, and they have stood to really declare that they are stopping FGM. We are working closely with them, and that commitment seems to be real. And we are glad that this is taking shape. And we think with the government on our side, with elders on our side, with all these interventions that James is talking about, we will see probably an end to this.
All right. And certainly from that COVID-19 story that we've seen, clearly these things are evolving. and the way COVID-19 has changed things means somehow maybe even us or you as the people who are actively participate in these issues maybe need to change the way you do to make sure that you sustainably move this forward. Just talk to us about, because you said you're not going anywhere as World Vision, just talk to us about you know, sustaining the good work that you do going forward.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Victor. We do appreciate that the landscape has changed, and we cannot continue doing things as usual, because I will tell you that the last strategy was on a not very stable, but when it comes to COVID-19, the environment has turned out to be very volatile.
Yeah.
And for that matter, what we have done as World Vision is to see how can we be able to be responsive to the changing environment and design a strategy and design a program that is speaking to the changing environment. And when we talk about the changing environment, you know, critical and very common to what has changed in the landscape is the whole issue of COVID-19.
Yeah.
When COVID-19 came, it actually eroded away the gains, the development gains, organizations like World Vision, the government and other stakeholders, the donors' investment that had been achieved in the past. And we are kind of getting back to the drawing board and saying, how do we even bring back the statistics to the right track and also ensure that actually our programming is dealing with effects of COVID-19 in working with the government.
Yeah.
And therefore, we have had to get statistics, and out of the statistics, then we have had to come up with very clear strategic priorities that addresses the issues that are very painful in the landscape that we are operating in. And so we are actually working with the government to do a lot of prevention, because if you talk about COVID-19, and I will tell you that even in our last financial year, current financial year, because we are responsive, because we are a responsive organization, we have had to adapt our budgets, moved them from certain investments to deal with life-saving, which is in COVID-19, working with the government and working with other stakeholders. Invested massively into prevention, messaging, because it's a behavior change issue. And so we have had to invest quite a lot in behavior change activities, using radios, using social medias, using, you know, media houses like you, really passing on the messages that are able to, you know, be able to amplify the issues of protocols.
And I'm just looking at your this going further together with hope and resilience for children. I believe this is your strategy for the next 4 years.
Exactly.
Is this what it does entail?
I want to say that's the name we have given our strategy, going further together for hope and resilience of children, because we feel like we've been called at this time to go further in addressing the vulnerabilities of children. And so we are walking the last mile together with our, you know, funders, together with the government, really trying to get to the real causes of vulnerabilities. And the uniqueness of this strategy is that this time round, we've been able to map up vulnerabilities in the places where we are, and we are able to tell you who is more vulnerable, and what is the name, what is their sex, where are they located, and we customize our interventions and response to that. And that's why we are saying we are going further. We are not leaving any stone unturned. We want to ensure that we get the real causes of vulnerabilities and ensure that interventions are addressing those causes other than symptoms.
My guess is that would, you know, gulp quite a good chunk of resources.
Exactly, because we are looking, we have even costed our strategy again. This is something that is very unique, that, and we are looking at spending around 30 billion Kenyan shillings for the next 5 years, running 2021 to 2025. Yeah. Okay.
And of course, we have to wrap up this, this discussion and because we're running out of time. But James, clearly, children, a child somewhere at this point is being robbed of their childhood, either being denied education, being denied health, being denied anything else, for instance, being married off, FGM and all that. Their rights are literally being violated at this point, and as she mentioned, the vulnerabilities are quite many. How do we move forward from where we are?
Yes, Victor, like my colleague Tina has said, You know, every journey begins with a step. And every step, you know, is strengthened through learning. And over 50 years that we've walked this journey, we've realized that there's a big potential in working together as organizations and really getting those organizations at the grassroots to be able to have the ability to take the first level of response.
Yeah.
And therefore, one cutting edge in this strategy that we've critically looked into is then how do we empower the local structures in a more profound approach that has never been done before.
Yeah.
Because we know that already there are existing structures. We have got the area advisory councils at the grassroots levels. But, you know, for a long time, they are either not properly, you know, facilitated. They are not given the right support. We've got very encouraging, you know, reports coming from some counties in this country where we have seen, you know, the government in those counties investing, for example, in healthcare, community health workers. And therefore, we believe that the first level is to really invest in these structures, give them the confidence, and inspire them that any time that they bring up issues, those will be discussed at the, on the desk. The second thing that we also want to reiterate is how do we get, children decisions and discussions and their voices to be heard at the policy levels where people are sitting on the desks to discuss about their issues. So that when you talk about climate change, for example, we talk about, government talking about the key issues, then the child-driven issues will be part of those, agenda. Because you've said that they are the largest population that we have in this country.
Yeah.
And so we can't really shy away from talking about the issues and getting them to voice their concern.
Okay.
I'll give you an example that very vivid. If you go to a school, for example, and you're an adult, you don't understand why a school should be fenced.
Yeah.
For a child, that is a big issue because it makes a difference whether they will be protected and learn safely in that school or not.
Correct.
But if you don't get a child to tell you that we need a fence in our school, then you will come up with the approaches that will not then address their issues. And lastly, I would also want to talk about a cohort of children that are living with challenges, disabilities and all that. And also the impact of the social media, on our children. One thing that we have determined to do, because of course, we are in an era where technology is really changing rapidly and thriving, is again, how do we invest into positive technology that then can make sure that the content of what our children receives, what they are able to watch, is something that will make them not to develop into criminals, but to responsible adults. And therefore, working together with the media is one key thing, and that's why we are here this morning, because we know that the media is a big and strong voice and advocate for our children. And we believe that through this type of engagement, through this type of awareness and bringing up the issues, then we are able to then tackle and work together and scale this big elephant that's ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you, James. And Tina, clearly, FGM, lack of education, and then to climate change, and now to COVID-19. From where I said those challenges are, we have the old, the new, and the emerging. What does that say about our response?
Yeah, just like I said, our response has to actually be informed by issues that are in the landscape. And even has to be anchored into the prioritization or for the different locations. So we have to contextualize even our programming focus. So the unique thing with our programming in World Vision, like I said, we are community empowering. So we spend a lot of time really having conversations with children and also with the community people. And in this strategy, I will tell you that while we are sure that we want to invest in education, in health, in faith and development, in child protection, and all these other mainstreamed themes of advocacy and disability, for each context where we are, we have had a conversation with the community.
Yeah.
And the community have talked to us and they have said, clearly these are the pressing needs where we want to have the investment. And they have really committed to also contribute in working with the county governments. And so the uniqueness of our strategy and how it is responding to all those issues is that we will not stand in here at the national level and standardize our programming. It is always very contextualized at the community level, being informed by the pressing needs that are done, that are actually very relevant at that level.
Okay.
And so we have some communities picking issues to do with water to respond to issues of COVID, because for them, clearly, I mean, some statistics show that, for example, Nairobi, Kajiado, Nakuru are the ones that are really, you know, facing quite a lot of challenges as far as COVID-19 is concerned. In some communities, that is not an issue. And so they have picked probably like education, they have picked livelihood and resilience, and it's a blend of, you know, the needs that have been brought to our attention, and together with the government, together with other stakeholders, and with our donors and supporters, we've been able to, and we hope we will allocate resources to be able to address all those things by dealing again with the root causes of vulnerabilities.
I think we are running out of time. Let me just get you a parting shot.
So thank you so much, Victor, for having us this morning, and it was quite insightful and productive to have this conversation. You can see we are very passionate about issues of children, and we have also painted a picture of the scope, magnitude, and the size of issues that we are dealing with. So on Friday this week, we are unveiling our new strategy, and we are calling upon the government to come and be with us, calling upon other stakeholders and the public to log in and be able to contribute and promise and commit to work with us this journey, because definitely it is not a journey that one organization can take alone.
So we have to work together.
Please.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And of course, that has been Tina Mukunda. She's the Operations Director at World Vision Kenya, and also James Angawa Anditi. She's the Program Effectiveness and Impact Director also at World Vision. And that brings us to the end of today's conversation. We have been talking about the Kenyan child, the African child, the challenges that he or she faces, whether they are old, whether they are new, or even the emerging ones like COVID-19, and how they can be protected going forward. And of course, for you, our viewer, we have thoroughly enjoyed your company for the last 1.5 hours. This is our last show of the week. We see you again on Monday on Your World. But don't go anywhere, because other programs are coming up immediately after this. My name is Victor Kiprop. Enjoy your weekend.
Presenting the new Harpic bathroom cleaner. Compared to ordinary detergents, its thick formulation gives you superior cleaning and kills 99.9% of germs and viruses all around the bathroom. Blue
for the toilet
and red
for the bathroom.